Okay. Well, welcome everybody to the People Strategy Forum. We're going to get started in just a few minutes. We're just going to chat while we're waiting for the top of the hour.
Good morning, everyone.
Good morning, Shar from sunny Puerto Vallarta.
Not jealous at all.
Right. But anytime I hear Puerto Vallarta, it makes me think of the Love Boat show from the 70s.
Oh, yeah.
Because that was always a port of call for them. Did I just reveal my age?
Yeah, I think I'm just supposed to be your positive inspiration.
There we go, showing us how it's going.
It's been an exciting adventure for sure.
Yeah, so the Love Boat, that's so funny. That was quite a while ago.
All right, let's go easy.
So we
Nobody
deal with
needs
some
to do
technology issues,
Yeah.
but we're working through it.
Yeah, I used to watch that show.
The plane, yeah.
Oh, that's
No, that was
The
Fantasy
plane.
Island.
Yeah.
That came on after the Love Boat on
Yeah,
Saturday
I do feel
nights.
like the Love Boat a lot.
I can't say I ever watched it. I grew up in the 90s, so I'm all about the 90s.
Well, as a matter of fact, I live close to the marina and the airport, so I definitely feel just like that. Yeah.
That was Saturday night TV, people. You watched the Love Boat, then Fantasy Island. And if you were a very good girl that day, your mom would let you stay
It's
up
an
to watch
interesting
Python.
world.
Yeah, we don't have to do that anymore. We just bring up Netflix and binge watch all weekend. Right?
Or YouTube or whatever.
So much choice.
Yeah. All right. So I know we're approaching the top of the hour here, so I think that we can go ahead and get started.
All right, well, I'll hop in and introduce everyone. Welcome everybody to the People Strategies Forum. If you are joining us for the first time, welcome. This is going to be a really valuable session. So I know you're going to get so much out of this. We have an amazing speaker lined up for you today. And a little bit about the People Strategies Forum. It's a mastermind of leaders dedicated to creating workplaces where people thrive, where employers reward and customers love. So that's a little bit about our forum. And let me introduce our panel here today. I'll start with Shah. She is a people strategist. She's really experienced with HR. She is coming to us from Puerto Vallarta, if you were tuning in a little earlier. So if you need help running your business remotely, she's the gal. She knows what's up. Belize, Puerto Vallarta, she's all over the place. So proving that you can run a business from anywhere in the world. And we have Sam as well, founder and CEO of Comp Team, and he is the man behind these forums and these sessions. So we're very grateful that he's here putting them on for us. And my name is Jules. I'm an on-camera and video expert. So I help people strengthen their on-camera presence, which in the world we're living in, we're all getting on camera, whether we like it or not. So I help people shine and get a little bit more confident. And I want to introduce our fabulous speaker for today. You're in for a real treat. We have Meredith Masse with us here. She is... Now, we went over this bio a little earlier, so I'm just going to read it so I don't mess it up. But she is the Senior Vice President of ICC, which stands for Innovate, Coach, and Consult. And it's a company specializing in scalable, technology-driven, coach-led leadership development. Quite a mouthful. We had to practice that one before. Her mission is to develop leaders who are on fire, who model and demonstrate the kind of world they demand to live in. And I just love that mission. That is, I don't know who wrote that, if you wrote it, Meredith, but that is so outstanding. It's really pops. So I'm going to hand it over to Meredith. We're really excited to have you here, and take it away.
Thank you. I'm going to just switch over so that Sam doesn't have to flip slides for me. But welcome, everyone. It is a pleasure, as always, to be back with the Comp Team today. I think this may be my third appearance on your weekly webinars since this COVID madness began. Can you believe it has been almost a full year of this? And so today we're going to talk all about digital disruption notably, because we've all felt it, right? And notably in the space of leadership development. So one thing that I'll say is, please chat in your questions. Sam, do you prefer if people use chat or Q&A?
Oh yeah, the chat is probably the easiest way. So if you use the chat, and also we are broadcasting on multiple platforms. And so if you happen to be on LinkedIn or Facebook or YouTube, of course, we're not going to be able to see your chat right away, but we'll come back and look at that and answer your questions after the session.
Speaking of digital disruption, who needs just Zoom? Zoom powering all these other platforms for more robust discussions. That's super fun. The pressure's on now. There's an audience.
That's right.
Well, I'd just be curious to start with a question. And that is, at least for the people who are on the Zoom portion, I'm curious to know how many of your organizations have seen some kind of digital disruption in the last year. Notably, what I'd love to know is, have your organizations implemented some kind of new technology? Yes or no? Yes, we've implemented, 5 new platforms, or no, not yet, but 3 are coming.
Yeah.
Just to give me an idea of who, what people's experience has been, especially in the last year.
Yeah, and let's give examples of that. I mean, a lot of time. I mean, right now the platform that we're on right now, Zoom. I mean, we had some even video conferencing before in a lot of companies, right?
Yeah.
But it may have been on a more traditional type platform. And Zoom is something that came up and really blew up at the beginning of last year due to the pandemic, just because it's so easy to use, and a lot of companies are using, because you don't have to download software. It can be done through the browser, and there's been a lot of enhancements on a lot of different systems to make it easier for people to use. So I think Zoom has been one of them. Yeah.
Mm-hmm. Someone is chatting in Zoom and Team.
Yeah.
And Zoom, Teams, a crisis communication tool. That's interesting. So I did notice, I think, Jules, there's a question about the definition of digital disruption.
You got it. Perfect. You're doing it for me. I love it. Yep, from Reed. Yep.
Really, anything that is related to new technology in your organizations, or a change in technology in your organizations. Mm-hmm. So you've implemented, a new video conferencing platform. And I'm trying not to give too many examples, because I'm going to give some that are very specific to the people strategy side of business and human resources in a minute. But that's good. It looks like, several of you are making some sense of this now digital world that we're living in due to the pandemic, and the fact that so many people even now are still working remotely. Some of us are stuck in Colorado where it's cold, not in Puerto Vallarta, Char. Look at her. Look.
I don't know if they can see me, but yeah.
So there was, you've all probably heard of the company Randstad. I hope I am pronouncing it correctly. But they did a survey in Q3 of last year, which, was kind of at I feel like it was almost the crux of the pandemic. We got through crisis mode early on. Remember when we thought we would be back at work in like 2 to 4 weeks?
Right.
And then summer hit, and we thought, and companies started making plans for going back. And then by fall, we all sort of settled into, and I hate to use the term because I feel like it's so overused, but the new normal. Randstad surveyed 200 of their own client companies. And so for those of you who said something about, yes, we implemented new technology, you are most certainly not alone. because they found from their client companies alone, between March and Q3, companies had implemented an average of 3.9 brand new technologies during that sort of height of the pandemic. 3.9.
Yeah. Yeah, Laura here mentions that there's almost too many digital channels to use. It can be very confusing when people are using, you might be changing or implementing different solutions during the year, or there's a lot of different channels that people can communicate through. And so that can be kind of rough.
I suggest speaking with your IT folks and asking for single sign-on. So you only have to manage it from one place. But don't tell them I said that. I don't want them stalking me because we're making new work for them.
Well, I have to say from my personal experience, it's been very hard not to have my own on-site IT department. And, it's been a challenge because technology is changing so much and my employees are using different technologies to speak to our physician groups and do their jobs.
Yeah. But
it's been challenging from the printers and the Zoom calls and even myself with my own laptop. I mean, it's internet connectivity. It's been a real challenge.
Yeah, well, that's a very interesting point to bring up. As people know on the forums here, I specialize in compensation and pay. And the jobs that have really blown up this past year, as far as gone up and significantly, are, can you guess, material handlers, right? For Amazon. Amazon's been, paying more people, or, higher wages to work there, and other companies have had to go and respond to that. And the other piece is IT jobs and HR jobs have all grown a bit. So IT, there's been a big boom there as far as companies that are supporting those small businesses remotely. And and just in a small town where I live, I've seen 3 companies pop up just in this year just to do IT support. So.
Isn't that amazing?
And our companies are willing to pay the price because there's no way we can operate without the proper IT support. It's essentially disabilitating if we can't have it. So we will pay double premium to have better IT help. Seriously.
Okay, well, if there are any IT entrepreneurs on this particular call or listening in on LinkedIn or Facebook, or you can find Shower on LinkedIn to sell your services.
Help me.
No, well,
I even ended up with a Latin keyboard I couldn't even figure out how to use. I was like, how do I use a Latin keyboard?
Yeah,
great.
That's awesome. Talk about, that's definition digital disruption right there for a native English speaker to have to relearn a keyboard that's not QWERTY.
Yeah.
No, you can't even put an @ symbol in when you type on this keyboard. You can't even put an @ symbol in there, and it's crazy. I mean, IT people will get my issue, but you'll go out on YouTube and you can't find a solution to it at all.
That's so funny. Well, I love what you said. Sam, about HR roles expanding, and certainly in the HR world, this technology piece and adding new technologies, there are no strangers to that. And in fact, in that same survey from Randstad, they reported the top 10 HR technologies implemented. Can anyone guess what the #1 HR technology was? This is where we should Workday.
Workday.
Yeah, think about what you might use technology for the most often. So I'm not necessarily looking for a brand name, but a use. I'll give a free Starbucks.
Well, I'll just say from personal experience,
Oh,
she froze.
There she goes. ATS, payroll, communication tools. We're getting closer. Performance management. Come on, who wants a Starbucks gift card?
let's see. So communication tools, performance management, and HRS systems. So used. So I know there's been a lot of outplacements.
What about, oh my gosh, I'm going to totally give this away. Were you able to meet with people in person when you were trying to fill any positions? You can't win.
Hiring tools, so interviewing tools.
Yes, video and online interviewing. Did somebody get it, or did Sam? Do I owe Sam a cup of coffee?
I'm not going to take they gave it away, so.
Well, for sure, video and online interviewing, because we weren't meeting in person. The number 2 was workforce collaboration tools. So you guys have already said Zoom and Slack and I forget Blue Jeans, which I've not heard of. Yep. But those collaboration tools. And number 3 on the list, believe it or not, is training and development technology. So the world of training was absolutely disrupted last year. You know, we weren't able to get together for those trainings that were planned far in advance. Even in my world, because we have traditionally hosted, Disrupt HR in Denver, that went away. So any of those big in-person events went away, and we weren't sitting around the conference table or in the windowless, freezing cold beige hotel meeting room for 8 hours of training. Mm-hmm. And truly, this is where I think we can spend some time today chatting about just how we got here. We don't have to go through the entire history necessarily of how we got here, but certainly it's really interesting to me to look at just how quickly the rate of change in organizational learning has sped up. Mm-hmm. And certainly in the last year out of sheer necessity. So in a keynote from the 2020 HR Tech Conference, I don't know if anyone else got to attend, and I say attend because it was all online. But Josh Burson, who hopefully everybody on this call knows, and if you don't, I highly recommend you look him up and follow him, because he's an HR innovator and trendsetter, to be sure. But he actually outlines this, this history, if you will, of organizational learning and the digital revolution that started, believe it or not, as early as 1998. Wow. So, if you think about it, prior to 98, for those on the call who remember that far back, Jules, maybe not, she admitted that she grew up a little bit later than I did. But that's when, training management systems, learning management systems really started to explode. Right. They were probably a little bit glitchy. The content was super expensive to build because, that you had the platform, but you had to build your own content. But then, in the 90s and certainly later 90s, do you remember when Google came to be? It was right around 1998, wasn't it?
Yeah, I think you're right. Yeah. Mm-hmm.
I actually remember, maybe it's one of those generational moments, but I still remember where I was sitting in my job at the time when a colleague from 2 doors down said, "Oh my gosh, have you guys heard about this new browser, this new search engine called Google?" And we all said, "Google? What kind of name is that?"
Yeah. My buddy at the time, he called me up. He goes, "Oh yeah, they have this email system. You gotta sign up quick and just reserve your email name so you can have it. It's going to be something huge." And of course, yeah, it's huge, all right.
I still have my original Google Gmail address because I heard the same thing.
Yeah.
You know, so I left Yahoo by the wayside, and Google was, you know, the it search engine. But because of that what's the word I'm looking for? Advent of Google, we started to see consumers of learning wanting the on-demand way of finding information.
Right.
It was right around the same time that the term e-learning came up. And at that point, instructional designers, especially with the help of their IT friends, figured out that they could build instructional content in HTML and other languages. And so all of a sudden, then we see this industry of content developers, tools, learning management systems were really taking off. And it was Google that taught us that browsing a course catalog was slow, maybe a little boring, when we could just search for exactly what we wanted.
Mm-hmm.
I remember the early days of Google when I would go in and type something and remember the little button, I don't even know if it's still there, that says, I'm feeling lucky.
Yeah, right.
And you click that and it takes you to the first website that it comes up with.
Mm-hmm. Yeah.
So consumers of learning wanted the same ease for finding what they were looking for. LMS or learning management system vendors at that point were starting to get a little concerned, but they knew that employees in organizations who were the consumers of their learning were looking for those kinds of features. But some of those LMS systems started to move into more, let's call it integrated talent management systems, and not just a learning management systems, as they saw the opportunity, in the early 2000s, especially for, it's the war on talent, and how do we get the right people in the right seats and get the best talent. But while the LMS companies were evolving, what we saw is a lot of the L&D market was still living in the world of courses, and most online content was still pretty traditional e-learning. And we'll talk about what that looks like in a minute.
Yeah. So just a little bit talk about this, Meredith. I mean, I've seen the development of this myself. I mean, over the years. I know that there was the LMS type of approach early on has evolved into on-demand, like you mentioned, where people can have their phones and they're carrying around if they're getting ready for a meeting with one of their direct reports, and they want to remember how to have that constructive conversation. They can pull up a quick training 10 minutes ahead of the meeting and be able to refresh themselves on that. And now what I've noticed that is coming out is on demand, or is personalized coaching and training that a lot of individuals are putting out. I mean, I know Josh Bernstein, you mentioned, or Josh Bernstein, you mentioned, has his site, and there's a coaching platform I believe he uses, and other people that they're able to get in on group coaching at a pretty reasonable price point, and touch up on certain things that they're wanting to focus on, whether it be talent management or management in general, or leadership. So there seems to be that phase that is coming now. Are you seeing that as well?
Yeah, in fact, that phase, I would say that phase has been a part of organizational learning for probably a couple of years. I mean, that what you're talking about truly is sort of that traditional e-learning, where I have an immediate need. Gosh, I need help with this. And it's almost like you've read my slides, Sam.
Oh.
And I can, quick look something up on my phone, have a quick video, That's sort of that traditional on-demand. I have a challenge or a problem or I need an answer. Let me dial it up and watch a 3-minute video, if that. And that's where we started to see this shift. So that let's talk about the digital learning 70-20-10 model. Mm-hmm. Where 70% of a role was learned on the job, so by doing, 20% was learned through interaction with others, and 10% was learned through, just like you're saying, structured online something, with that ability to dial a coach, to ask for help, or look for a YouTube video. And then by 2018, and Burson by Deloitte did a study, I think it was in 2016, about the modern learner. And we don't just mean, let's be clear, we're not talking about just millennials or Gen Z or whatever we're going to call the folks who are coming into the workforce now, but truly the modern learner in the modern workplace. And what they found is that the modern learner is either they have or they're only willing to devote 24 minutes total per week to development, to learning and training. So gone are the days of the 8-hour sit in a classroom and drink through a fire hose. They want it in short snippets. So this is where we started to see, the term micro-learning come into play, where we're taking bigger topics. And this is a technical term, so write this down. Chunking up bigger topics like emotional intelligence into smaller pieces to learn in the flow of work. Because we started hearing at ICC, as early as probably 7 or 8 years ago, our clients started saying, we don't have time to pull our managers off the floor, whatever that looked like, or away from their desk for an 8-hour training. So what you got in a half day? Better yet, can we do it in 2 hours? And 90 minutes would really be better. Now, can you imagine trying to wave a magic wand, truly, and say, okay, here's everything you need to know about becoming an emotionally intelligent leader in 2 hours or less, poof, suddenly you're an emotionally intelligent leader. Fly, be free.
Yeah.
So we have to be careful about, this digital disruption, and make sure that we're still designing based on what skills we're trying to instill. So going into the meeting and reminding yourself about, how to give effective feedback. Fine, watch a little video. Oh, that's right. It takes these steps and buy-in from the individual, etc. That is especially relevant, again, and I think Shar was talking about it before, when it's, a quick, I need help. And that's really, what's gotten us where we are now, which is obviously right here. So traditional e-learning is still great for this more, I don't want to say simple, but the less complex skills that we're trying to teach. It's the I need help. I need help now. So think about, I actually talked with a manager at a telecom and cable company who came to us and said, I'm working with guys, because they're mostly guys in the field. And what they're used to is, oh, I remember seeing this particular apparatus in my training, but I haven't worked on it in a while. I need to listen to me. I need to search up, the quick YouTube-like video. to remind myself how to, plug this widget into this widget. I'm clearly not a technical person, so just try to go with me here. But what about in leadership development, where we're trying to teach much more complex, nuanced skills? I always use the emotional intelligence as an example, because it's one of the toughest ones to learn, though it can be learned. Are you going to there I go again, search up a YouTube video on how to be a great listener? I mean, you could, but how effective is that going to be? So we really have to be conscious of matching the tools and the design to what it is, the level of skill that we're trying to help, in our case, managers and leaders fully absorb, if you will. Let me put it in these terms. Think about running a marathon. If I sat you down and don't tell me you're a marathon runner, Sam, are you a marathon runner already?
Former marathon runner.
Okay, so this would be good. Before you ever ran your first marathon, if I sat you down and, we're desks facing each other, and I said, okay, I'm going to teach you all the theories about proper running. Could you get up the next day and run a marathon? I mean, you know how to run it.
No.
Okay. If I gave you the best pair of shoes and taught you how to tie them and gave you a little video and reminded you how to tie your shoes on top of the theory with that new tool, could you run a marathon the next day?
No, definitely not.
No, probably not. So the more complex the skill, like 26.2 miles, the more time it takes to develop that, that behavior, the muscle memory, if you will, right? So in traditional e-learning, that's I can teach you how to tie your shoe. But if we're really trying to teach something new, like emotional intelligence or leading our teams through change, or dealing with conflict in the workplace, the videos might be helpful tools, just like the shoes, but it doesn't automatically give the skill and the know-how. What it takes is, well, in the case of the marathon, what if I coached you and said, okay, today you're going to run 1 mile? Could you do that the next day?
Probably.
Yeah, give or take. You could finish a mile, even if you had to walk part of it. And then the next day I said, okay, now it's 2 miles. And by the time you get to 10 miles, I say, okay, you know what? And today I'm going to run next to you as your coach. And we're going to find things that can make your running more efficient. And I'm going to give you some feedback. When we talk about leadership development and digital disruption, it takes more than taking your in-person training from the beige, freezing cold, windowless hotel meeting room and rubber chicken for lunch. It takes more than the tying your shoe solution, and it takes time, because one of the things that we focus on in our leadership development is, yes, we are going to break up learning into small bite-sized pieces, because again, remember, leaders only have 24 minutes a week, but it has to be delivered over time with the help of a coach, if you will, or a mentor.
Yeah, and really quick, let me just comment on that, because I think that's a big failure in a lot of traditional learning that companies are doing. I mean, so I work with a lot of startups and growing companies, rapidly growing companies, and in a lot of them, the learning and development is almost a second, an afterthought, because they're growing so fast and they haven't put a lot of time into development. And And so they're thinking about putting in these programs in a traditional sense. But, of course, as you pointed out, Meredith, I mean, it's especially in the modern workplace, having your own mentor or coach or person that's invested in developing you personally and taking you through that journey is highly impactful. So it's great to have, if you're just doing these little 20-minute sessions, to your point in this marathon example that you have, it's great to have that sequence, know what the sequence of steps are, so you can get from A to B, because using the metaphor of eating an elephant all at once is impossible, right? So it's good knowing the steps and having something to keep you motivated to accomplish those pieces, and then getting you to that end result. I think that's the modern development element. So, so thanks for that example. I think that really brought that out clearly.
Yeah, good. So, and I love the eating an elephant metaphor, right? How do you eat an elephant? One bite at a time, I think is the answer, right? Same thing, but we can't, again, and I know lots of companies did this out of sheer necessity in the last year. I'm going to take my 8-hour training and I'm going to plop it on Zoom, and fine, we'll, use the breakout rooms and we'll still have that interaction. I don't know about learners in our participants' organizations, but we tried that one day at ICC earlier this year, and you'd think that we would know better based on the fact that we do this for a living.
Yeah.
We were trying to squeeze in, a nearly full day. I think we were 9 to 3. And oh boy, did our leaders get an earful afterwards. We were all done by lunchtime.
Right.
Zoom fatigue, the mental fatigue of being on a screen. And I think it was a real eye opener. And we all said, you cannot do this again. Half day max.
Right.
Because we at least that way, we could vary the activity. We weren't just in a big group. It wasn't just a big lecture. And we actually got more done in a shorter amount of time than I feel like we did in the longer session. So we have to match the training, if you will, to the complexity of the skill we're trying to teach, and this attention span issue and Zoom fatigue and everything that we've learned over the last year.
And I just wanted to point out one more thing. I know, Shar, you're doing a leadership coaching piece that it's on a weekly basis now. That's right, with your team. So how is that going? What have you learned through that process?
I don't know if you guys can hear me because there's so much background noise going on here right now. Can you hear me okay?
Yeah.
Gotcha.
Everybody keeps talking around me. So we've basically been using very microburst learning through the TMA method and the comp team. And it's short lessons with videos, and also an ability to hit submit with discussion around talent management strategy. And my leaders are going through that. Actually, they're going through around lesson 3 or 4 right now. And then weekly, we have a conversation with them to say, what are you learning around talent acquisition, onboarding, recruiting, retaining? And they absolutely love it because they can do it at their leisure. It is actually at their fingertips. They can do it right on their cell phones. And it's not like some big cumbersome learning management system.
Yeah.
So definitely different. And I would say that my leaders have more rewarding conversations. And we're piloting this program because we're going to be offering that to our clients through the comp team company. So
nice.
About 20 of my employees will be going through this program ultimately.
Very cool.
Very easy and very robust. And it's been great as a leader to be able to go through.
Yeah. I love it. I'm going to give you a checklist of everything that we've learned to make sure that if it's not already included, something to think about. So again, the whole point is figure out what's the complexity of the skill that we're trying to teach and what's the right mode You know, is it the quick dial up? Is it?
I definitely think you need the conversation about that. Yeah, because.
Can you say that one more time?
Right.
I think we missed that. It came out garbled. Go ahead and say it one more time. Oh, I think we lost it.
Yeah, unstable internet here, but we'll definitely want to talk about that.
Okay. Go ahead, Meredith. I'm sorry.
Okay, cool. Yeah, just really quickly, you know, you have to think about what we're trying to teach. Is it simply new knowledge? Then it could be, you know, an email or a job aid of some kind that says, you know, you need to know X, Y, and Z. I think here, you know, in the HR world, thinking about new knowledge is maybe, you know, some new laws that are coming out and what it means for your interviewing. So it's, you know, could be a job aid that's as simple as you can ask this, you may not ask this, or you'll get us in legal trouble. You know, so it's just imparting new knowledge. And what's the right digital tool for that? If we're trying to, in addition to new knowledge, instill new skills, then how do we teach a new skill in a digital setting? Give people the opportunity to talk about it and start to, you know, practice those new skills. If we want those new skills to turn into actual new behaviors, then it absolutely takes practice. And this, Sam, I think is a perfect place to say that this is where, you know, you're a coach or a mentor who's running beside you and watching you run the marathon and saying, listen, when you put your right foot down, you sort of turn in. So let's try a new behavior of keeping your foot flatter, for example, if we stick with the marathon theme. When we're talking with our clients at ICC, what we are really trying to help them understand is, you know, is new knowledge enough? Are new skills that they're familiar with, is that enough? Are new behaviors enough? Or do we need to include a little bit extra time and some on-the-job, especially, practice and reinforcement with a coach, our own manager, a mentor, to instill new habits? And our focus now, you know, and let me be clear, we've done stand-up training. It's, you know, part of what we built our company on, and would do week-long programs with leaders in, you know, in the conference room, and every day was a new topic, and, you know, plug in the fire hose and start drinking people. Of course, we still followed that up with coaching to help make sure they could actually, you know, use the skills. But so much of the recent literature, especially in the last, I'd say, 3 years, has been talking so much about habits and leadership habits. I mean, if you're an avid tooth flosser, you know, maybe it's a habit now, but at first you probably had to think about it. Oh, that's right, I want to be better about flossing my teeth, you know. Silly example, but maybe you get what I'm talking about. And now it's just automatic. Well, we want the same thing to happen with these more complex skills within leadership. And so to form new habits, what we've done with our, you know, training is we've taken that idea, like you said, Sam, of turning traditional training on its head. There's all sorts of information out there. If you wanted to look up the Ebbinghaus forgetting curve, you'll know just how much people forget within a day of your traditional training.
Yeah.
And I can put that in the chat because who knows how to spell Ebbinghaus. But so what we recommend and what we're doing with our clients, if you're trying to harness the power of digital disruption and your goal for leadership development is creating new habits, please first, number one, redesign. Again, less than 5 minutes a day. Modern learners are either willing or have to devote to their own development. So the 8-hour trainings, especially if we're just trying to throw them on Zoom, kick them to the curb. Focus on one skill at a time, just like Shar was saying that she's doing with her team, and make sure the learning is in small chunks. The official term in the training and development world is micro-learning. Mm-hmm. And then reinforce it. Shar was saying that they have weekly conversations, right? How are we going to get our learners to apply these new skills on the job? Well, we have to keep the new skill, the new behavior top of mind. I have a picture of, an app on a phone. It could be as simple as something like that, like Shar was saying before. It needs to go beyond a reminder, but how will you get them to interact with the learning more often than just the first time? So that it's top of mind, and we're giving them prompts really to go try to use that new skill in your day job. And then when you try it and it doesn't work the way that, the facilitator, for example, said it would the first time, that's where the coach comes in, Sam, to say, well, what did you try? We've been talking in emotional intelligence about active listening. What did you try? What went really well? And let's celebrate that. What didn't go as well as you would have liked? And now how will you do it differently next time? And so we call that realigning, right? So that as you're starting to go off the rails, trying out these new skills, the coach is there, whatever title that person has, but let's call them a coach. Again, sticking with the marathon example, can get you back on track and, get you realigned on practicing those skills. And the last piece is reinforcing yet again. And yes, that R is on there twice on purpose. When we're partnering with our own clients, we get either the manager of the person that's being developed, either the manager or some other company sponsor involved. Someone who knows what the individual's day job looks like and can say, hey, and we feed them prompts too. So they don't have to be an expert coach. We feed them prompts to say, okay, today, this week, your direct report is learning about active listening. So in your one-on-one, ask them about how it's going and do these things. Mm-hmm. So that the manager can say, hey, I know you've got a tough one-on-one next week. Let's practice. How are you going to practice active listening in that conversation, for example? And all of this happens over time versus that 8-hour drink through the fire hose thing. So if you're looking to harness technology in leadership development, because remember it was, training and development was number 3 on the list of new technologies that companies are implementing since the pandemic started. Think in terms of redesigning so it's smaller, bite-sized, edible chunks that are delivered over time. Remember to reinforce to keep that top of mind and encourage practicing through, prompts to say, hey, go have a conversation with someone. Get a coach or a mentor or someone involved to have live conversations, even if it's over Zoom. That's how we do it. To help course correct as people practice, so that they're not just throwing the workbook away at and saying, well, that didn't work the first time. So, right. It's like the marathon. You got to take 1 mile at a time.
Right.
And then get the leaders and managers that you're involving in development, get their leader or manager or some other sponsor from the company involved to help hold them accountable to trying it in their actual day job. That's just good adult learning theory, right?
Now, I really like what Daniel has to say here. It says, one of the most important leadership lessons is realizing you're not the most important or most intelligent person in the room at all times, right?
Daniel, I wish I could give you a high five. Speaking of emotional intelligence.
Right. And, I was just thinking about, where does this, a lot of the times as leaders, we feel like we need to have all the answers. And I'm wondering, does this come from maybe our parenting days where our children come up to us and expect us to know everything? Why is the sky blue? Well,
Yes.
But as leaders, it's important to realize that, hey, there's other experts out there that can do this better, or our time should be more focused on certain other things, and so hand it off to the experts, right?
Yeah, well, and I couldn't agree with you more. And who better to act as the expert as the people that you've hired to do their jobs.
Right.
And you don't have to know every technical aspect, but as a leader, you absolutely have to work to learn how to be a leader that others want to follow.
Mm-hmm. So I know Meredith.
I got a little soapboxy, didn't I?
Yeah, that was good stuff.
And this has been so, the way you explain things, Meredith, and break it down into these bite-sized pieces is so, it's just awesome. I'm like sitting and like my eyes are glued to the screen, taking everything.
Oh my goodness, thank you.
So this is
I hope so.
And I hope everyone's enjoying it as well. I just wanted to jump in quickly because we are reaching the top of the hour. So if you have any questions for Meredith, please pop them in the chat now so we can get them answered for you. This has been just such an epic presentation. So please, pick a brain now because it's a great opportunity to, get all your questions out. We still have a couple of minutes. So and we'll get those answered for you.
Great, and really quick as we're coming into this, I want to make sure that we are bringing up our sponsor here, and so I'm just trying to get to the right page.
There we go.
And let me share my screen here. There we go. And so here I just want to point out that TMA Method is our sponsor for the People Strategy Forum, and the TMA Method is not just a system, a computer system program that focuses on integrated talent management, but it's also a process. And the process piece is how do we keep talent management as part of the entire journey of that employee from the time of hire to the time of exit. And so this system helps companies have that organized methodology. So we love the TMA method here, and we use it a lot in our practices. And as Shara has mentioned. So if anybody wants to learn more about the TMA method, they do have a lot of free sources out there. There's the Competency Library, which is a free resource. If you look that up at competencylibrary.com. And if you'd like to take a free assessment, we can also bring that up. So I'm going to bring up a quick poll here for those that are on the Zoom platform. If you wish to sign up for a free assessment, you can do that through this poll. And if you would like to have any time with any of our speakers today, Meredith, you can sign up with Meredith here and get a 15-minute call with her to learn a little bit more, or any of these individuals here if you'd like to. So feel free to sign up. Now, and also I want to call out our speaker for next week. Jewel, do you want to give a bit of an introduction to what's going on here?
Yeah, for sure, for sure. You know, we always have something very exciting and fun every week. So that's why you need to be consistent, show up every week. That's how you're going to get the most out of these sessions. So next week we have Greg Roche, and he is going to be speaking to us about networking for introverts. I can't wait for this one because I need a little bit of this. Yeah, because, you know, some of us big personalities, we can be a little shy too. So if that's something that you would find interesting, hop on next week, same time. He actually wrote a book for networking for introverts. So he's going to be discussing the book a little, taking questions, and giving us an awesome presentation as well.
Can I give my own plug for next week's speaker? From speaker to speaker, Greg Roche is fantastic. And if you want to get a sneak peek at the speaker, look up his Disrupt HR Denver talk from several years ago, like 2014 or 15 maybe, about about talent management. It's fantastic. He's super smart, and I'm not an introvert, shocking. But I look forward to next week's session. That will be an excellent one. Yes, Disrupt HR Denver, and look up, and you can search that on Google and look up Greg Roche's talk.
Yeah, I'm really excited about this discussion, so it'll be great. All right. Well, you know, I know I know that if there's any more questions, please bring them up in the chat, and we'll take those before we close up here. Disruptive. So I'm just looking through the chat to see
if you had any really good takeaways. Pop them in there for Meredith as well. Show her some love, because this was really wonderful. Thank you so much for being
Absolutely
here, giving us your energy. We really appreciate having you here.
Mm-hmm. Yeah, one of the things that I was looking at the training that you mentioned as far as that sequence. And what was the sequence again that you mentioned? There was could you bring us through the reinforce and so forth?
Redesign is number one. So no more 8-hour trainings, please. I'm begging you. Even when we go back in person, because what we know is that participants in those kinds of sessions will have forgotten 90% of what you spent painstaking hours developing to teach them. They'll forget 90% of it within a week. So redesign it so that, think in terms of elementary school. First, we learn addition, then we learn subtraction, then multiplication, then division, and build on the skills that you're teaching. The second is reinforce. So give them prompts over a period of time to keep that new learning top of mind, and encourage them to practice. So it's not just reminders, but get them active with the learning, even if it's self-reflection or taking a quiz or listening to a new podcast, and certainly finding ways to implement that in their day jobs. The third R is realign, and that's where the coach comes in. Whether it's an external coach, a mentor internally, but who can help them course correct when they try out these new skills. I mean, did you ever fall? Do you know how to ride a bike? I shouldn't assume that everyone knows how to ride a bike. Right? But you probably fell a couple of times before you got the hang of it. So, and maybe your mom or dad or older sibling, was there to help pick you up and balance you again and run alongside until you got going. That's what the coach's job is, is to help, again, course correct as you try out and try on new skills and new behaviors. And then the last R is reinforce, again, with the help of either a direct supervisor or some other company sponsor who can say, okay, I know that you're learning about X, And, you know, again, we send them prompts, so they don't have to necessarily know. But when they're in our leadership development programs, the manager gets a prompt that says, ask your direct report about X, Y, and Z, and help them find opportunities in their day job to go practice this, and then follow up with them so that you know, the person or the group of people that we're trying to develop know that, gosh, my manager actually cares that I'm learning this, which tends to help with motivation, so that they will actually go and try it and do it again in their day job. So redesign, reinforce, realign, and reinforce yet again.
Great.
All over time.
All right, thanks, Meredith. Yeah, so any other questions before we close up here? Jules,
last chance. No, we had a lot of great session, good info. So I'm taking that as people who really enjoyed the session, but it doesn't look like we have any other questions.
Great. Well, it's such a pleasure having you, Meredith. Thank you for joining us once again.
Well, thanks for inviting me back.
Yeah, it's always a pleasure having you.
Thank you, thank you. I always have fun with you guys.
Great.
Pump team is awesome.
Yeah, so is ICT. So thank you so much for being here. All right. Well, thank you everyone for joining us. I think it was a great session. A lot of good expert advice coming from the chat too. Thank you, Daniel, for the thoughts, and I know that a lot of good activity there. And so thank you, everyone. And we'll catch you next week.
Thanks, everyone.
All right. Cheers.
Bye.
Great day, everyone.
Bye.
Bye.